The champagne flute shattered against the marble fireplace with a sound like frozen laughter. My stepbrother, Peter, didn't even flinch. He just smiled, that thin, reptilian smile he'd perfected over 32 years. "A toast," he said, his voice smooth as the single malt he was pouring. "To finality, to blood, to things being as they always should have been." Across the library of our late father's Fifth Avenue penthouse, my stepsister, Celeste, raised her own glass. Her eyes, the color of winter sea, found mine. There was no triumph in them, only a cool, clean satisfaction, like a surgeon closing an incision. "To the true Archer legacy." I, Philip, the cuckoo in the nest, the ghost at the feast, said nothing. I stood by the window, watching New York glitter with indifferent wealth far below. In 12 minutes, the reading of my stepfather, Alistair Archer's will would begin. I already knew my role, the audience for my own financial execution. "You should be grateful, Philip," Peter mused, swirling his drink. "Father allowed you to keep the education, the connections. Most men wouldn't have been so charitable with another man's bastard." The word, so casually lobbed, still found its mark. My mother, Isabella, had been 6 months pregnant with me when she married Alistair. My biological father was a jazz pianist who'd vanished into a haze of heroin and regret before I was born. Alistair had been the rescue, the savior, or so the story went. "Peter, don't be vulgar," Celeste chided, but there was no heat in it. "Philip understands the situation, don't you, Philip? It's simply biology. The Archer fortune, built over 4 generations, must flow through Archer blood. It's not personal, it's primogeniture." It was always not personal, as they systematically erased me. The exclusion from family trusts at 18, the oversight that left my name off the founding plaque of the Archer wing at the museum. The Christmas 2 years ago, when Alistair gave Peter and Celeste keys to new Aston Martins and handed me a leather-bound journal. "For your thoughts," he'd said, his tone implying I had few of value. My mother had died 5 years earlier, ovarian cancer. Quiet, brutal, and in her final days filled with a desperate, clawing anxiety I mistook for pain. She'd clutched my hand, her voice a papery whisper. "The ledger, Philip. Find the unseen ledger. It's all there, for you. I'm so sorry I waited." I assumed it was the morphine. The unseen ledger became a family joke. Peter would mockingly present me with restaurant bills, calling them potential unseen ledgers.
The mahogany-paneled conference room smelled of lemon polish, old money, and anticipation. Alistair's lawyer, Mr. Thorne, a man whose face resembled a clenched fist, presided at the head of the table. Peter and Celeste sat to his right, heirs apparent. I took the chair farthest away, near the door, an exit strategy built into my posture. The will was a masterpiece of precision and cruelty. Alistair's $800 million empire, the hedge funds, the real estate, the private equity stakes, the art collection, was meticulously partitioned between his beloved children, Peter and Celeste Archer. Specific bequests followed: the summer compound in the Hamptons to Celeste, the vintage yacht to Peter, the first edition library to the Metropolitan. My name appeared once. To Philip Rossi, my stepson, I leave the sum of $1, and the contents of the storage locker Unit 7B at Manhattan Mini Storage on West 47th Street. This bequest fulfills in its entirety any and all claims he may have against my estate. Peter choked back a laugh, turning it into a cough. Celeste pressed a manicured hand to her lips, her eyes wide with a pity so profound it was more insulting than scorn. Mr. Thorne's monotone continued, but I didn't hear it. $1, and a storage locker. The final, perfect metaphor for my place in this family. A dollar's worth of obligation and the dark, forgotten clutter of their lives. "Any questions?" Thorne asked, removing his glasses. "Yes," Peter said, leaning forward. "When can we take possession?" The estate will take approximately 9 months to— No, a new voice interrupted from the doorway. It was a woman, perhaps 70, with a severe silver bob and a black suit that screamed of quiet, formidable expense. She carried a briefcase older than I was, its leather worn soft as butter. "I'm afraid there will be a delay, a significant one." Mr. Thorne's head snapped up. "This is a private meeting. Who are you?" "Eleanor Vance, of Vance, Colt and Llewellyn. I represent the Isabella Moretti Rossi Irrevocable Trust." She entered the room as if she owned it, which, in a legal sense, she was about to suggest she might. My apologies for my tardiness. The traffic from Wilmington was abominable. "Wilmington? Delaware? What is this about?" "The Archer estate," Eleanor Vance said, setting her briefcase on the table with a soft thud. "Or rather, a significant portion of the assets you just so eloquently described does not, in fact, belong to Alistair Archer. They are the held assets of the Isabella Moretti Rossi Trust, of which Mr. Philip Rossi is the sole beneficiary." The silence was atomic. It sucked the air, the light, the very meaning from the room. Celeste was the first to detonate. "That's absurd! What trust? My stepmother had nothing. She came into the marriage with nothing, a school teacher from Queens." Eleanor Vance didn't even look at her. She opened her briefcase and began laying out documents in neat, devastating rows. Isabella Moretti was the only child of Antonio and Julia Moretti. Antonio Moretti founded Moretti Precision Instruments in 1962. You might not know the name. They didn't seek publicity. They manufactured specialized components for the aerospace and medical industries. Very niche, very profitable. Peter had gone pale. "Moretti? I've heard that. From Mother. She said they were comfortable." "They sold the company in 1985 to a German conglomerate for $285 million, Vance continued, her voice like a scalpel. Isabella's share, approximately $92 million after tax, was placed into a Delaware irrevocable trust the month before her marriage to Alistair Archer. The trust was structured with extreme provisions for confidentiality and asset protection. It explicitly excluded spouses and step relations from any knowledge or benefit. Alistair Archer never knew it existed. My heart was a frantic bird against my ribs. $92 million in 1985. My grandparents, the sweet retired couple in the modest Flushing house with the plastic-covered sofas and the endless plates of biscotti. They'd told me they were machine shop owners. Retired. "That's impossible," Thorne spluttered, grabbing one of the documents. "I handled all of Alistair's prenups. There was no mention." "Because you weren't supposed to know," Vance said coolly. "The trustees were a private bank in Zurich. The law firm was in Delaware. It was a closed circuit, Mr. Thorne, designed by very paranoid, very clever Italian immigrants who didn't trust the handsome, wealthy American their daughter was so desperate to marry." She turned her gaze to me. For the first time, her expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Mr. Rossi, your mother was the lifetime beneficiary. She received a generous annual income, but she couldn't touch the principal. And she could never, ever reveal the trust's existence without risking its dissolution and the assets falling to a contingent charitable remainder. Her parents' final instruction was brutal in its clarity. If he ever knows, he will try to take it. If he tries, he gets nothing, and it goes to save other women's children. They'd seen his type before.
"So where is it?" Peter hissed, his composure shattered. "If this fairy tale is true, where's the money?" "It's not just money anymore, Mr. Archer," Vance said. She slid a single sheet of paper toward Thorne. "This is a summary. The trust's investment mandate was aggressive. Your stepmother, Mr. Thorne, had a preternatural gift for finance. She guided the investments remotely through coded communication channels with the trustees. The trust didn't just hold cash. It bought, it built. She began listing them, and with each name, the world tilted further on its axis. The commercial building on Madison Avenue, where Archer Capital has its headquarters, purchased by the trust through a shell corporation in 1998. Archer Capital pays rent to itself, essentially, with the profits flowing to the trust. The tech startup Alistair, backed in 2008, which had its spectacular IPO last year, the trust was the silent majority seed investor. The boutique hotel chain in Japan Alistair was so proud of acquiring, the trust owned 40% of the debt, converted to equity upon acquisition. The Van Gogh study he donated to the museum with such fanfare, bought at auction by the trust, then sold to Alistair at a fabricated low price for the tax break. The payment cycled back into the trust. She let the list hang in the air. In essence, for the last 30 years, Alistair Archer believed he was building an empire. He was, in fact, acting as a highly effective, entirely unwitting asset manager for the Isabella Moretti Rossi Trust. The current valuation, she paused, looking directly at me, is approximately $1.4 billion. The number didn't register. It was too large, too abstract. What registered was the look on Peter's face, a rictus of pure, undiluted horror. What registered was Celeste, staring blankly at the documents as if they were written in hieroglyphics. What registered was Mr. Thorne, sagging in his chair, a deflated balloon of a man. The will, Thorne stammered, is largely irrelevant regarding these assets, Vance finished. They were never Alistair's to bequeath. They passed directly to the beneficiary upon the death of the lifetime beneficiary, Isabella. That was 5 years ago. We've been conducting a forensic audit and untangling the integrated holdings since then. It's been complex. You all have been living inside the trust, financially speaking. I found my voice. It sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. My mother? She knew? All this time?
Eleanor Vance's eyes held a depth of pity and understanding that made my throat tight. She knew everything, Philip. She orchestrated most of it. The luck Alistair had in business, her subtle guidance to the trustees, the generous donor who funded your full ride to Stanford, the trust, the venture capital firm that backed your failed restaurant when no one else would, a trust vehicle, the anonymous buyer who purchased your paintings year after year, keeping your art career afloat, a trust subsidiary. Every pivot, every rescue, every moment of inexplicable good fortune in my life, the scholarship that appeared, the mentor who sought me out, the critical review that praised my struggling artist phase, came crashing together. It wasn't luck, it wasn't talent, it was her, a marionette master hidden in the wings guiding the strings of my entire existence. Why? The word was a broken thing. Why the charade? Why live with him? Why let them? I gestured at Peter and Celeste, who were now whispering frantically to each other. 2 reasons, Vance said softly, pulling a sealed letter from her briefcase. It was my mother's stationery. I knew the faint lavender scent from across the table. First, the trust's inviolability was linked to Alistair's ignorance. The moment he suspected, he would have moved heaven and earth to break it, and the legal battle could have drained it or triggered the charitable remainder. She was protecting your future. And the second reason? I asked, my eyes on the letter. Vance looked at Peter and Celeste. She told me, in one of our many confidential meetings, that she loved you 3, all of you. She saw what Alistair was doing to you, Philip, but she also saw what he was creating in Peter and Celeste, monsters in his own image. She believed if she left, she could save you, but she would doom them completely to his venom. She stayed to be a counterweight, a whisper of conscience in their ears. She failed with them, I think, but she stayed to try. I took the letter. I didn't open it. Not there. The chaos that erupted was predictable. Peter screamed about fraud. Celeste demanded her own lawyers.
Thorne argued jurisdiction. Vance merely collected her documents, handed me a card, and said, "The storage locker, Philip. I suggest you visit it. The key is with the doorman of your building. Your mother left it for you years ago." I walked out of that room, past the spluttering remains of my former family. The city outside hadn't changed, but I had. I was no longer Philip Rossi, the overlooked stepson. I was the quiet, unassuming king of a hidden kingdom. The storage locker was exactly what I expected, a 5x5 cube of dust and memories. And there, in the center, on a wooden music stand, was a large, leather-bound ledger. The journal Alistair had given me was a mockery of this. This was the true, unseen ledger.
I opened it. The first page was in my grandfather's precise, spidery Italian. Per nostra Isabella e per suo figlio, il vero cuore, contro tutti I lupi. For our Isabella and for her son, the true heart, against all wolves. The pages that followed were not just financial records, they were a chronicle of a secret war. Charts of Archer holdings with trust ownership percentages circled in red. Copies of Alistair's arrogant business plans, with my mother's elegant handwriting in the margins, suggesting alternative strategies. Strategies the trustees then implemented. Printouts of my own achievements, my report cards, my art show flyers, all neatly taped in with little notes. Philip's resilience score, A+. His color palette is evolving, just like his Nono's. And the letters, dozens of them, to me, never sent. Apologies, explanations, prayers, rage against Alistair, despair at Peter and Celeste's cruelty, pride in my quiet defiance. The final entry was dated a week before she died. My dearest Philip, if you're reading this, Eleanor has done her job, and I have failed to find the courage to tell you myself. Forgive me. For 30 years, I lived a double life. In one, I was Mrs. Archer, the docile, grateful wife. In the other, I was General Moretti, directing a campaign to secure your future from behind enemy lines. The money is not the point. The point is freedom. The freedom Alistair stole from me and tried to steal from you. The freedom to be who you are without his shadow ever darkening your door again. I used their own greed against them, Philip. I let Alistair build his palace, knowing you owned the land. I let Peter and Celeste preen as heirs, knowing they were just temporary residents in your house. It was a long, cold game, but you were always the prize. One last secret. Your father, the pianist, he didn't abandon us. He was ill and broken, and he asked me to let him go so I could find stability. He loved you in his way. I loved Alistair once in mine. Love is not always wise, but protection, that can be perfect. What I did for you was perfect. Now go, build something beautiful, and be kind to Peter and Celeste if you can. They are prisoners I chose not to liberate. That guilt is mine to bear. All my invisible love forever, Mom. P.S. The Van Gogh in the library is a forgery. The real one is in a vault in Geneva. I rather enjoyed watching Alistair show it off, a little joke between us. I closed the ledger, holding its weight in my hands. The unseen ledger. The story of my life, written in invisible ink. Now, finally revealed.
The lawsuit Peter and Celeste filed was dismissed with prejudice in under 4 months. The trust was, as Vance promised, a fortress. The judge, in a hearing, looked at them with disdain and said, "You're not being robbed of an inheritance. You are being asked to vacate a property you never owned. There is a difference." I didn't take the penthouse. I sold Archer Capital and dissolved the holding companies. I established the Moretti Foundation, focusing on arts education for foster children and financial literacy for survivors of domestic abuse. the invisible support my mother would have approved of. I did keep one thing, the fake Van Gogh. I had it hung in my modest downtown loft, a reminder that the most valuable things are often not what they seem, and that the quietest people in the room are sometimes running the entire show. 2 years later, I saw Celeste at a charity gala. She was thinner, harder, her Archer money finally finite. She looked at me across the room, no longer with pity or scorn, but with a kind of bleak recognition. She gave the slightest nod, an acknowledgement of the game and the master player we had both underestimated. My mother, the school teacher from Queens, the docile wife, the secret general. She'd played the longest game of all, checkmating a tyrant from beyond the grave with the one weapon he never understood: a mother's love, patient, strategic, and absolute. And as I looked at Celeste's nod, I finally understood my mother's final, heartbreaking gambit. She hadn't just left me a fortune, she'd left me the truth. And in this family, the truth was the most shocking twist of all.